to me, one of the things you talked about, and I want to dive in a little bit deeper on that playbook, because like that made my eyes pop up. When you think about, like, not going into details, but when you think about that roadmap of going from 10 to 25 to 50 to 100 employees, what are some of the common pitfalls that you've seen SMB leaders make from the people operations perspective?
Oh, that's a great question, and some of this too, I'm learning as I go, right? Because I'm seeing some of it as I'm out and working with different organizations. But I think a lot of it is just I don't need someone. We can handle this. It's not a full-time role that I need. I can, I can just engage with maybe a PEO and they'll handle all of it so I don't have to deal with any of it. And I think sometimes there are some situations, especially when you're really small, where some of that works. But I think if you start to outsource too much of that, then you're letting someone else drive your culture, right? And so you need to be really thoughtful about, it goes back to the four things I mentioned earlier. It's intentionality, it's thoughtfulness, it's adaptability, it's flexibility, right? And too often, okay, I need to figure out how to do payroll and get people paid, and that's all I really care about. Well, that's a part of it, right? But it's not all of it. I think there's so many common pitfalls. And then, there are times when you hit certain numbers where you have to, a 50 employee company and a 100 employee company are going to be required to comply with certain standards and things across, maybe from a national perspective or federal perspective to a state perspective. And there's just so much evolving and changing landscape that keeping track of all of that on your own while, like you said, you're trying to do your day job and the thing that you're the best at, it's not wise. So it's best to kind of have an expert come in and help you, and then help you determine, when is it time for me to pass that off and, give it to that internal person to handle from a full-time day-to-day perspective. So lots of thoughts there.
Absolutely. And Jill, I appreciate those insights. And a lot of what I think echoes to what you just said, that we approach from the finance perspective is similar, right? A lot of times when we're working with SMB organizations, what I sit down with the CEOs, the business owners, the founders of these growing companies is say, this is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to help set the vision, the strategy, the tactics, the metrics, the milestone and execution plan that your organization needs, right? And when you're a 10-person organization, that's a lot different than when you're a 250-person organization. And one of the common, I think, pitfalls I see from the finance perspective is once you start growing as an organization and you start moving in more complexity inside your organization, you're probably moving up in market. Most CEOs, owners, and founders at SMB growing businesses, they rely so much on their gut instinct, right? They rely so much on this feels right. Like, I think this is right. And that is where you need that level of sophistication to say, hey, we don't need to rest on our gut feelings. Gut feelings is like, hey, who knows that? Let's become more data-driven inside of our organization. Let's make sure that we're making the right decision. And also, let's make sure we're making the right decision, not because of the loudest voice in the room. A lot of times you may have that salesperson, that loudest voice in the room, and a lot of the opportunities and initiatives and projects that the business wants to do, it's because they're the best talking person, right? So as you continue to grow and you continue to scale, the level of leadership, the level of sophistication, and the level of data and what you utilize to make actionable decisions becomes a lot more valuable, and the stakes become bigger. So definitely having that framework and working with HR leaders like Jill and Evolve HR to help you set that roadmap, so to speak, is like, hey, here's where you're at now, here's where you want to be, and here's how we're going to set the vision, the strategy, the tactics, the metric and milestones and execution for you to get there. And having that resource, having that expertise, having that knowledge, having that passion at a fraction of the cost of what you can have for that full-time resource, it becomes like a no-brain decision. Like, why would you not do that, right?
For sure. For sure.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the other things I want to talk, we talked about, the culture aspect of it. You gave some great examples of how finance and HR can come together. We dove into the SMB side for that fractional advantage that a lot of SMB can tap into that skills, passions, talents.